Can you say, my name is Eric Saunders?
My name is Eric Saunders.
And you're listening to...
Uncle Richard.
Very good.
Welcome to the Skeptic Zone, the podcast from Australia for science and reason. Here are your hosts, Richard Saunders and Stefan Sojka.
Hello, Richard.
Hi, Stefan.
I can't believe I'm actually here. I'm in the pre-think tank holding dock.
You are.
It's phenomenal.
You've come along for the think tank, but we thought we'd do a quick introduction to the show before we start.
It's fantastic to be. I'm actually walking among skeptics at the moment. It's a phenomenal experience.
We've got more skeptics coming in as we speak. They're all coming in.
Teeming into the place.
They're teeming into
phenomenal.
the place. So, folks...
Hey, how are you?
Hi, Eran.
Good to see you.
So, folks, you're in for a big think tank. A big think tank a bit later on.
A bit later on. That's right. Right now, it's the intro. So, welcome to the Skeptic Zone.
And this is show number 67 for the 29th of January.
January, yes, indeed.
January's nearly gone.
And it's been a big week too because we had Australia Day.
We did.
That was really, really Aussie.
Were you particularly Australian on Australia Day?
Well, I stayed in the country.
You did?
That's about it. Well, that's true. Yeah. No, I didn't even get drunk or anything because I'm actually on a new detox program called Stop Drinking.
Are you?
Yeah, it's phenomenal. It's a miracle.
In fact, Dr. Stefan, we're going to be hearing more from you later in the show, aren't we?
We may well. So what's happening? What's happening for this wonderful 67 show?
We're going to kick off with an interview I did in California with Eugenie Scott.
Oh, she's a bit of a popular one on the show.
Oh, absolutely. Eugenie Scott, very popular lady, of course, at the National Centre for Science Education, doing her best to fight the creationists.
Oh, yes. Oh, that's a tough fight.
That's a very tough fight.
Because we are actually living in creation. We are. In inverted commas.
Creation is all around us.
It's all around us, yes.
Can't wait for that. Eugenie Scott, always something good to say. That's followed by, of course, Dr. Rachie reports.
Oh, Dr. Rachie. Oh,
she's a popular girl at the moment. Dr. Rachie.
Lots of news floating around Dr. Rachie at the moment.
We'll get to that in the think tank, I think. And that's followed by, of course, and you're here for the think tank.
Think tank, I'm actually here, yes, finally.
People are gathering.
I know that the tension's mounting, it's all here, but we should actually get a bit of the show underway first, and then we'll come back for it.
We'll do it, Stefan.
Waiter! Menu, please. Thank you.
Eugenie C. Scott is an American physical anthropologist who has been the executive director of the National Centre for Science Education, the NCSE, since 1987. She is a leading critic of young Earth creationism and intelligent design. I had the pleasure of visiting Eugenie at the National Centre for Science Education in Oakland, California. I'm delighted to say that we've come to visit Eugenie Scott once again in Oakland. Hello, Jeannie.
Hi there.
Now, this is my third or fourth visit. I seem to be finding myself here almost every year over the years, I think.
That's wonderful. Come back any chance you get. We're delighted to see you.
I do. Now, let's start straight away by something that struck me. I was just looking at your notice board, and I saw this lovely little booklet called Big Daddy. With a classic. A classic. It's sort of a weird ape or chimpanzee eating a banana. Big Daddy ? And when I first saw it on the wall, I thought, oh, that's interesting. They've got a souvenir of the Big Daddy pamphlet from the creationists from the 70s, which is the first time I remember seeing it. I had a Sunday school teacher, in fact, who was a mad, keen creationist. And she was trying to convince us all. She gave me this little book. But upon further examination, and when I looked at the back, it's got a website. It talks about Lucy, and that's what caught my eye. I thought, Lucy? 1970s? That doesn't make any sense. So they're using this tired old ridiculous Big Daddy, and, the moon's missing. That's interesting. think the original one had The Age of the Moon in it from the 70s.
Well, I couldn't tell you for sure, but, Lucy goes back to the 1970s. You may just be misremembering your original exposure to this gem here. But this is Chick Publications, Jack T. Chick, the famous pamphleteer from Southern California. As soon as the web became available for proselytizing, he pretty much jumped right on it. I don't think that... Big Daddy has been updated very much over the years. It is indeed one of the real classics. This has been one of their most popular of the creationist line. Of course, Jack Chick has got a whole variety of pamphlets on a whole lot of other religious themes other than evolution. Of course, we're only interested in collecting the evolution ones, but yeah, he's got a whole bunch of anti-Catholic ones, and he's got anti-Jewish ones, and he's got anti-gay ones. He's got all kinds of stuff. Yeah, it's a pretty sobering sight if you go to www.chick.com. He must have gotten that domain name very early.
Yes,
as domain names go, he must have snagged that very early in the game.
I seem to remember a number of years ago somehow doing a search for this sort of thing and coming across a PDF of that Big Daddy, but it must have been from the 70s or something like that, because it seems to me to be the one I remember. And as I say, the one I remember from all those years ago had The Age of the Moon as one of the arguments for a young Earth, you see. Well, how do you explain that when the astronauts went to the moon and they put their foot in the or whatever it was, and the dust argument, you see.
Oh, the meteoritic dust on the moon.
Yeah.
Yes, that's one of the classics. I don't recall whether that was in Big Daddy. I'm flipping through it right now, but yeah, that is one of the classic arguments that the creationists have used. Although, interestingly enough, if you go to Answers in Genesis, which is now arguably the largest of the young Earth creationist organizations, surpassing in size its the Inspiration organization, I guess you could call it, the Institute for Creation Research.
The Inspiration organization.
Oh, yes. Answers in Genesis could be considered progeny, as it were, of the ICR. Started by one of your folks, of course, Ken Ham, an Australian who was inspired by Henry Morris of the ICR, and came to the United States, worked for the ICR for a number of years, and then branched off to form Answers in Genesis himself in Kentucky. But anyway, ICR has now grown larger than, Answers in Genesis has grown larger than the Institute for Creation Research. But if you look at the ICR website, the answersingenesis.org, you'll find a list of arguments creationists should not use, and the dust on the moon argument is one of them that they argue should not be used because it's not scientifically accurate, which of course makes those of us trained in science just hold our heads, because there's this kind of craziness with young Earth creationism. Some of them actually are trying to act like scientists some of the time, which is what makes it such a fascinating sociological area of study. I mean, they'll look at arguments like the dust on the moon argument, or a historical claim like Darwin's deathbed confession.
Yeah.
And they'll look at the evidence and say, okay, those are not valid arguments, so we should stop using those. Or the second law of thermodynamics is not a valid argument against evolution, so we should stop using that. And yet, at the same time, they still do not reject the basic way of thinking about these issues, which is the major problem that they have, which is that you put the revealed truth of the Bible first, and you look, as in fact Ken Ham will tell you on his website, you look at all of the empirical evidence through your biblical glasses. That's the phrase that he uses. That everything has to be viewed in terms of its agreement with the revealed truth.
Yeah.
And that is the major stumbling block in terms of accordance with science. So they kind of have to get over that first before they could really be taken seriously as scientists. But, God love them, every once in a while they accidentally do something right, like Darwin's deathbed confession should be taken off the list of arguments. Well, thank you for that much anyway.
I think I heard an interview with Richard Dawkins lately where he said that at his deathbed he wants video cameras and tape recorders rolling so no one can come back and say, Dawkins had a deathbed revelation or something. I think that's actually very funny. Richard does have a sense of humor, but somebody is probably going to see a little puff of vapor somewhere and say, aha! If you want to believe in that sort of thing, you will find some kind of mystical evidence of God knows what. People will come up for evidence for what they want to believe in. So somebody will probably, 50 years from now, we will probably have Dawkins' deathbed confession, or maybe even Scott's deathbed confession, for all I know. Who knows? Or Saunders' deathbed confession. Who knows what they'll be talking about. I hope that's not 50 years. I hope that's like 70 years. But
that's closer for me and Dawkins.
It's also the same accusation, if that's the right word, has been made about Carl Sagan, that he had a conversion on his deathbed.
It's a very easily learned meme, as it were. Mm-hmm. There are some ideas that are very easily learned and very rapidly spread.
Yeah,
and that's one of them.
Yeah, that's an easy one too, because you can just say it. Mm-hmm. As we were discussing before the interview, when you can just make stuff up, and people will believe you.
MSU. That's
that's right.
That would be nice to put in cross stitch and frame it on the wall.
We say that a lot about our the people we battle against, especially in the skeptical world. They can just make stuff up. For stuff, indeed. You can read whatever other S word you like. But it's true. But just speaking, getting back to Richard Dawkins, I recently had the pleasure of reading his new book.
Yeah.
The Greatest Show on Earth,
Mm-hmm.
which I thoroughly enjoyed. I really love his style, and he takes you on these wonderful little adventures down evolution. And it's also, it taught me an awful lot about the process of it, and this wonderful idea of how important islands are to evolution, and be those classic islands in the ocean, like the Galapagos, for example, or the tops of mountains separated by deep valleys, which are also islands and things like that, and on it goes. So if listeners haven't bought themselves a copy of The Greatest Show on Earth, I can thoroughly recommend it. I imagine you enjoyed it.
Very much, very much. And as he says in the introduction, and I had never really thought about it this way, and so that was really fun to read. He says, I've never actually sat down and written a book about the evidence for evolution. Yeah, good idea.
Yes.
Good job.
Yeah,
Thanks for doing this. And it's a very good. I'm really glad he did, and it's a very nice book for me to be able to recommend to people who are looking for a very readable. And Jerry Coyne's book is another very readable, nice, short introduction for people who are trying to understand what evolution is all about. Another person who's very good at that is Carl Zimmer. He's written a new, it's actually a textbook. It's called a textbook. It'll be marketed as a textbook, but don't think of it as a textbook, because textbook has a connotation of being sort of boring and ponderous, and this is not. Carl Zimmer is a wonderful science writer, and his book is extremely lively and well illustrated, and it's just, it's hard to put down. So there's a number of really good books out on the market these days to help people understand why evolution is so well accepted by the scientific community, and where the evidence comes from. And how abundant that evidence is.
Yes, and I like the point that Dawkins makes in his book, that the fossil record it's a nice bonus as far as the evidence for evolution, but it's not necessary. So when the creationists squawk on, which they will do to the end of time, about missing or gaps, or whatever, the missing links, gaps in the fossil record, or whatever it is. As far as the science goes, it's neither here nor there.
Actually, I have to disagree with him on that.
Oh, yes?
Because we need all of the sources of evidence if we're going to have a complete picture.
Yeah.
I think it's wonderful that we have all this molecular evidence, but that doesn't mean that the fossil evidence is obsolete.
I wonder if I've misstated.
No,
this
you
point.
haven't, because he was almost that forceful in his book.
Right.
And that's, he was perhaps making a very useful point that we are not dependent upon the fossil evidence. Mm-hmm. And that's a very good point to make, especially with the general public, which I think doesn't understand how much we can supplement our understanding of evolution from the study of extant organisms.
Yeah, yeah.
And actually, periodically people will ask me, well, what's the single best source of information about evolution? And lately I've been, you can say the fossil record, you can say genetics, you can say this or that, but lately I've been saying biogeography, because it's an area of evidence for evolution that most people don't think about, but it was actually the one that Darwin thought was most strong. And it still is a wonderful, wonderful source of evidence for evolution because, the distribution of plants and animals and their characteristics are the way they are because living things descended with modification from common ancestors.
Yeah.
But I'm diverging here from the point that we were talking about. The fossil record is a wonderful source of information about evolution. We are not dependent upon it, but there are things that we can understand about evolution only from the fossil record. Mm-hmm. We're not going to find out, well, let's just take an example from the human, but we're not going to find out when humans started using fire from molecules.
I understand.
Okay?
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, that's a really obvious one.
Yeah.
And we could come up with some other examples as well.
Yeah. Okay, no, I get the point. But be that as it may, the wealth of information in Richard Dawkins.
What Darwin's contemporary Whewell called consilience, the fact that all these different lines of evidence all point to the same conclusion, that living things had common ancestors. And today we would add to the biogeography that Darwin talked about, we would add the embryological evidence. Last night there was a wonderful program on the PBS Nova program about Evo Devo.
Which one?
What Darwin didn't know.
What Darwin didn't know? Yeah, I saw that listed. I didn't catch it.
Well, I alas missed it last night. I'll have to catch it online because we had dinner with some friends. But the whole nature of understanding how it is that a fertilized cell becomes an organism, and the similarities and differences of the genes and the patterns of development are the way they are because living things shared common ancestors. I mean, that is another insight into evolution. And you can only understand those patterns of development if you understand evolution, and you can only understand evolution if you understand those patterns of development. So there's this feedback system in what they call evo-devo, or evolution and development, that becomes very clear when you look at both of these fields together. So you have biogeography, you have the field of embryology, you have all the wonderful understandings we have from molecular evolutionary studies in comparison of various phylogenies of a variety of molecules, a variety of proteins and enzymes, and the more recently you shared a common ancestor, the more similar your proteins. I mean, these kinds of patterns are very, very clear only if evolution has taken place. Genetics is the way it is because of common ancestry. You can just find pattern after pattern after pattern in biology because of evolution.
Yeah.
And that is what Whewell meant by consilience. That is really what Dawkins is talking about in his book.
He makes, it's interesting, he makes a couple of the same points, which is unavoidable, I guess, as he did in The Ancestor's Tale, which is a marvellous book, too, about when you go back, you find the... now, what is the word he used for the common ancestor of two species. When you go back in time, you'll find the one common ancestor, and you can branch that back and back. I just can't remember the term he used for that common ancestor, but he talks about that in the Greatest Show on Earth, of course. If you go back and you can make a U-turn and follow the other branch to another species. For example, with us, if you go back far enough, you'll find the common ancestor between us and chimpanzees. And if you take a U-turn, then you follow it to the chimpanzees.
Mm-hmm.
So that's he just writes about it in such a readable way, so easily easily understood. Yes, and now speaking of Darwin's documentaries on Darwin, recently in Australia, there was a 4 or 5 part or 3 part, I can't remember, series about the life of Charles Darwin, which was interspersed with scientists commenting. I can't remember if you were involved with that or not, actually. Which was marvellous, all about his life and his discoveries and that sort of thing. And Wallace came into it and all that sort of stuff. But I note, and I was just in Borders Bookshop yesterday, in Berkeley, I think, or downtown San Francisco, and I was looking on the documentary shelf for the DVDs, and there was one about Darwin. I thought, that looks interesting, and I flip it over, and I was reading the back, and it said, Creation Ministries. What? I think you know a little bit about this one. This is the one that is on your website about the...
Oh, was it Darwin's? I mean, listen, there's a list of creationist movies about Darwin.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's hard to know. Where shall we begin? Was it Darwin's Dilemma?
Yes.
Okay, well, there you have it. So you are asking perhaps about the lawsuit.
Well, I'm asking about that, and also, I haven't seen this Darwin's Dilemma. I don't know too much about it. Have you seen it?
I don't think I've seen that particular
Right.
one, no, but I know what it's about because it's been making the rounds. My colleagues have seen it.
Okay.
I've been... 2009 has been a busy year. It's been the big Darwin years, so people literally all over the world have been having a lot of Darwin conferences and
Of course.
programs, and it's been quite wonderful. But I've been fortunate enough to have been invited on a lot of requests for speaking, so I've been out of the office a lot. So I'm a bit behind in a lot of these other kinds. But my staff has seen it, and so we know what it's about. One of the main arguments made in this video is that the Cambrian explosion is an extremely difficult problem for evolution to handle. That it is this insurmountable object for evolution, because evolution cannot explain the sudden appearance of all of these body forms, which is a lot of nonsense, of course. MSU, as we were saying earlier. So this, of course, comes as a great surprise to paleontologists who considered an interesting scientific puzzle, but certainly not an insurmountable obstacle, and certainly nothing that would throw out the possibility of evolution.
Yeah.
Number one, there are Precambrian precursors for this, quote, explosion. And as to explosions, it's an explosion in geological terms, in the sense that it takes place over about 10 to 20 million years. It's kind of a slow fuse for the most of us in terms of what we would consider an explosion. But whatever. It is interesting from a biological and geological standpoint, because a lot's happening pretty quickly, and why this is happening is the interesting geological and paleontological puzzle. Is it because there's more oxygen? Is it because there's more predation? Is it because things are forming shells because of greater predation? I mean, there's lots of fun stuff that paleontologists are playing with here. But under no circumstances is anybody throwing up their hands in dismay and saying, "Oh dear, Darwin was wrong." That's nonsense. But this is one of the melodies that the creationists have been playing for decades, that this is a great problem. So this movie, as well as several other presentations of the creationists, have been proposing that the Cambrian explosion is this insurmountable obstacle.
It might be worth me buying, actually, because I noticed on the cover it looks like they've got some actor to play Charles Darwin, and it almost looks like a documentary. I suppose it is, in a way. But it was on the same shelf as Expelled.
Well, at least it's in with birds of a feather.
Yes, that's right. So, but that's an
I think
interesting...
expelled also includes the idea that the Cambrian explosion is this great problem for evolution.
Probably. I have watched it, but I sort of erased it from my mind a little. But it's an interesting tack they're taking now to do something like this, to create a what looks like a historical drama / documentary about Charles Darwin. However, basically bagging what he did. You know?
Well, that's free speech. I'm all for free speech. If there's one thing I'm a fundamentalist about, it's free speech. I mean, they certainly can have the right to express their opinions on these matters.
That's right.
I mean, what we need is more speech to counter it. That's all.
And as we're chatting, I'm having a nice cup of coffee from this very interesting coffee mug that you've
indeed that I purchased, mind you.
You've purchased.
It was on sale.
It's from a museum. I'll have you know, listeners. So it's very good. It's from a museum. It's got a triceratops, a very nice looking triceratops.
Yes.
It's a wonderful quality. Creation Museum.
Indeed.
Prepare to believe. Genesis 1:1. It says, and the writing on it seems to be, oh yes, let the waters, let the God and things, and it's a bit faint. The earth was, and the dinosaur covers up half the words. But this is from the Creation Museum
in Kentucky.
And you had a nice time there,
Absolutely.
I presume?
Yes, I visited the Creation Museum when was that now? Was that... how quickly they forget. June, I guess it was. With the
just recently.
There was a North American Paleontological Conference meeting in Cincinnati, and one of the field trips that the organizers of the conference decided upon was just to go around the corner, so to speak, to the Creation Museum, which was located just about 15 miles away. And so a couple of busloads of paleontologists showed up at the Creation Museum, and it was a wonderful experience. The press loved it, by the way. You can find plenty of coverage of this and I was all for it. I thought this was a wonderfully educational experience for the paleontologists.
Oh, I agree.
Because
I absolutely agree.
They really need to see what was being presented to the the citizens there.
If I might make a quick point, not to interrupt your flow of conversation, that I encourage skeptics to visit, for example, New Age festivals.
Right.
You have to know what you're talking about, and you have to know what the other people are thinking and what they're peddling and what they're doing. So I think that was a marvellous idea. But carry on.
Indeed. Well, there you have it. Yeah. And I bought some books for our library, of course, and but I just had to buy a mug. We have quite a good assortment of mugs here at NCSC in our kitchen, and this one was on sale. It was being remaindered and clearance, so I didn't want to spend a whole lot of money on it, so I bought a clearance mug. It was quite attractive, actually.
It is. It's very nice.
Very nice. We're kind of big dinosaur fans around here.
And it's a nice deep mug.
It is indeed. It's a good quality, and a good quality mug.
A very good quality
Indeed.
mug, in fact. Pride of place, I consider. And what did you think of the Creation Museum?
Well, I had a pretty good idea what I was going to see, because one of our NCSE members, Dan Phelps, had done an exceedingly thorough tour, had literally photographed every bit of signage in the museum. He'd done a fabulous job, and every single exhibit, and had written up an extraordinarily detailed tour, and had posted the whole shoot match on our website. So I pretty much knew what was there.
Right.
It's the kind of traditional creation science. I knew that it was very high quality exhibits. The animatronic dinosaurs were first rate.
Yeah.
I mean, the videos that they projected in the video screening rooms were, very nicely done. There was a great deal more religious proselytizing than I anticipated. I mean, I knew that the whole purpose of this museum, obviously, was to try to bring people to their particular religious perspective. Again, that's another free speech issue, freedom of religion. And of course, the science is sort of a way of trying to bring them to that perspective. But it was really quite heavy-handed, and I think had I been a religious person, I might have been offended. In fact, the scientists who were on the trip who were religious were very offended because their religious views were being sometimes directly and certainly indirectly criticized as not being pure enough, so to speak.
Yes. I've seen that before with the creationists. They will
insufficiently
come down very
biblical
strongly against moderate Christians. Absolutely,
Yeah, and it was sort of like you really have to hew very, very closely to a biblical literalist point of view, otherwise you are not being, a proper Christian. And as I say, the scientists who were people of faith who attended were offended by that. And but of course, all of the scientists, whether they were religious or non-religious, were offended by the quality of by the distortions of the science that were presented, and the idea that these were scientists who had spent their lives trying very hard to understand nature. And it's not easy. Nature doesn't just sit there and say, okay, here's the answer. You have to, in the cases of these paleontologists, literally dig it out. And you go down blind alleys sometimes, and sometimes it's 3 steps backwards and 2 steps forward, maybe a step to the side, and you kind of muddle around a bit, and sometimes you work for years before you actually stumble upon the right answer. And now all of a sudden this is being treated in a very cavalier fashion.
Yes.
As if these conclusions don't really matter because, after all, they don't agree with the revealed truth, with these people's interpretation of the revealed truth of the Bible. And I think that was offensive to every scientist there. Just the general putting down of the scientific procedures that resulted in the consensus view that we all held as scientists going there, which was, yes, there's lots of evidence that living things that had common ancestors, we all agreed upon that, but that was being totally dismissed in this institution.
Was there much stifled laughter or just disgust?
Oh, everybody was very polite.
Yes.
Everybody was very polite. There was because there were many other people there as well, and all the paleontologists were were on their best behavior. I think amongst ourselves, and if we were the only people in the room, I think there certainly were some sort of comments to one another and a certain amount of eye rolling.
Yeah.
But I didn't see anybody. Certainly, nobody created a fuss or anything like that. Nobody had to be thrown out. Everybody was behaving properly.
Well, that's good. So you found the coffee mug in the gift shop.
Indeed. Oh, the gift shop.
Yes, tell me about the gift shop.
Man, the gift shop was bigger than my office. Yeah. I don't mean this little office. I mean my building. Whole office.
Yes, really.
Yes. It was really quite the place.
Yeah. What did they have?
Oh, they had, it looked like a big library. They had lots of books, they had lots of knickknacks, they had toys, they had games, they had videos, they had plenty more mugs. They had lots and lots of stuff. All kinds of things that you could buy. I love museum gift shops. Oh, I do too.
Spend hours in museum.
You could get ties, you could get all sorts of wonderful items. I actually ended up buying a whole sampler box of books. Our archivist was just overjoyed that we got this whole sampler box of educational materials there.
Yes. Creationist tie. Now that would be interesting.
Oh yeah, it's.
I've got a nice tie.
I didn't buy one of those.
I've got a nice tie that has crop circles on it.
How wonderful!
Yeah, eBay. So a creationist one would be quite fun.
Have you seen Richard Dawkins' Crocoduck tie?
No, I haven't.
Well, I haven't actually said this to anyone, but when Richard was in town, I guess it was in October, he was doing a fundraiser for the foundation in Silicon Valley, but he had been in Southern California for the meeting of the AAI meeting. But anyway, so he came by, and I had invited him to stop by because I thought he might like to meet staff, and staff could meet him, and that would be fun. So he showed up, And we were having a staff meeting, and you've seen our staff table there. And I looked out the door and I said, and the doorbell rang, and I looked out the window, and the door was glass, and I said, there's Richard. Oh, God, he's wearing a horrible-looking tie. I couldn't help, And everybody laughed, and Richard walked in, and it was this god-awful tie. It was this white tie, and it had these big yellow splotches all over it. I thought, ordinarily, Richard is just impeccably dressed. I mean, he wears very nice suits. He's very well groomed, and he was wearing this god-awful tie. And he sat down, and when he got close enough, and we all just roared because it was this crocoduck tie, and it was hysterically funny. Well, apparently, there's only 2 crocoduck ties in the universe. On the good old internet again, apparently you can give a pattern to some company on the internet, and they will make you a custom tie. And there's apparently only 2, and P.Z. Myers has one, and Richard has one. But really, you only want to wear them among friends because they're really an absolutely horrible-looking tie in terms of anything. But it's the wonderful crocoduck with the really nicely drawn one with where the scales of the crocodile head really blend nicely into the body of the duck. They're really high quality one. Excellent art.
I must see if I can find a picture of that. That sounds fantastic.
But it was pretty funny.
But I quite like your logo.
Oh,
actually,
yes.
you changed
Thank you very
it not
much.
too long ago.
We did.
Yeah.
Since your last visit. That's true.
Yes, you were changing it, or it was changed or something, because I noticed when we came to the door there it was...
Correct.
So.
We changed our logo, it was just about a year ago when we changed our website, and we sort of...
Your website is very simple, yes.
Yeah, our website needed a... as one of my under 20 staff members said, when we started this process about 2 years ago, she said, our website is so 1990s. I thought, okay. I understood what that meant. So we did indeed have to. Our website really needed a facelift, and it needed refreshing, and it needed some backdoor plumbing to make it more usable, and so we hired a designer who just did a wonderful, wonderful job. And it took a long time to really think through how we wanted to redesign it and reorganize it. And then as part of that, of course, we'd been thinking for a long time that we needed a new logo because nobody could really identify the old, sort of squashed spider that we had there. It didn't. Yes. And so we actually had a contest to suggest a new logo, and we suggested something having to do with trees because evolution is all about trees, of course, right? Yeah. And did you extra gold star if you recognize our logo?
Recognize?
Yes. Did our logo speak to you, my friend?
Oh, I'm going to miss out on that gold star.
You're not going to get the gold star.
Where is it? Let me have a quick look now.
Well, let's see. I can provide that to you pretty quick. Oops, that's the old one.
Oh, the old one. Oh, that's the old one. Yes, I remember that.
There we go. Ta-da!
Oh, I need my glasses.
No, take out your glasses.
Let's have a look.
All right.
Well,
he's looking now, ladies and gentlemen.
Studying it very carefully.
He's studying it very carefully.
I can see the tree.
Mm-hmm. It's a very special tree. 2009 was a very special year. I'm giving him lots of hints,
You are giving me lots of hints, and I'm going to have to...
It was a very special year because a particularly important person was born 200 years ago.
Well, I'm gathering that, but I'm still trying to find the... You'll have to give
That
it
was
away.
the first tree, so to speak. That was the sketch of a tree that Darwin sketched out in one of his early notebooks.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, now you recognize it.
Me.
We'll give you a silver star.
Thank you. And I get to keep your card,
you can keep
too,
a card.
Thank you, yes.
It's a slightly stylized version of it, but it's basically Darwin's
It's quite
tree.
striking. I quite like it, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
National Centre for Science Education, and the website, of course, is www.ncse.com, which is very easy to remember.
Indeed.
Although I seem to have trouble remembering it now. Now, you're the National Centre for Science Education is how old now? That old, huh?
Well, we were incorporated in 1983.
Okay.
And I've been the director since 1987.
And how has the last year fared for the centre?
Well, we're a nonprofit organization, so that means every year we have to, we have to raise money. So you can join online.
Yes. I encourage our listeners to
at
do
that
so.
ncsc.com site.
That's the one. But as far as your activities go and your outreach and your battles, has it been a good year?
Well, a good year would be no activity at all. And so in that sense, it hasn't been a good year. We've been very busy. Next year, actually, it's coming to January, which in the United States is the beginning of the legislative season. The state legislatures are going to be coming into session again. We anticipate a number of bills will be filed. Some have already been pre-filed that we're watching, to propose what are called academic freedom laws, or academic freedom acts. And these are laws that attempt to bring creationism in through the back door.
Sneaky.
They don't. Oh, very sneaky. But creationists aren't stupid, and they learned long ago that you can't bring creationism in through the front door.
Yeah.
You can't, because of our legal, our First Amendment separating church and state. You can't promote religion directly in the schools. You have to be religiously neutral in a public school. So you can't bring in creationism or intelligent design. So what they try to do is bring in, through these academic freedom acts, bring in all the explanations, or particularly interesting with some of these academic freedom acts. The argument is being made to just attack evolution. So you bring in the strengths and weaknesses of evolution, or a critical analysis of evolution. Or there's a whole list of euphemisms that they use for this sort of thing. And of course, if you go to the science community and you say, well, can I please have the list of arguments against evolution? There aren't any. And the only place where you find that the strengths and weaknesses of evolution is from the creationists, of course. So this
do you
is
find the press fall for this? The old teach both sides, or where's the balance, or this side and that side?
It's a very common and a very attractive approach.
Yeah. It sounds fair, doesn't it?
Fairness is always sells very well in democratic countries.
Yes.
And I'm all for fairness. But what is fair is for the creationists to demonstrate they've actually got a science, and then they have a right to be taught.
Yeah.
But it's not fair for them to argue that they have a right to be taught without making that demonstration first. And they have not demonstrated that they have a way of understanding nature. And until they do, they don't have a right to be taught.
As long as there's the National Centre for Science Education and people like Eugenie Scott out there batting for our side, so to speak.
With our allies.
Giving them a hard time, I think we can all rest a little better at night, but the fight certainly goes on.
Well, it's like the Red Queen. We are running as hard as we can to stay just a little bit ahead.
Jeannie Scott, thank you very much.
Thank you. It's always a lot of fun to talk to you.
Hi, I'm Dr. Stefan Sojka from the Metavibrational Galactic Atomic Health Institute for Applied Wellness, and I'm here to tell you about what is probably the greatest medical discovery to have manifested in any of the lower 5 or 6 dimensions since the dawn of the first astrological age. Introducing the Life Wire. The Life Wire is nothing less than a miracle in metaphysical form, attracting healthicality and well-beingitude from every known point in the universe where healthicality and well-beingitude resides, and delivering it straight to your body and soul. The Life Wire harnesses scalar energy, quantum energy, solar energy, and masculine bovine fecal energy in an at-once highly complex and incredulously simple process. Using a meticulously contrived blend of carbon and iron, the carbonic and ironic particles resonate and vibrate to the atomic frequency bestowed upon them by the universe, rendering the entire LifeWire construct a healing wand, talisman, charm, or totem. The life wire has been lovingly forged in China, where the wire is set into its initial physical state by adherents of Confucianism, Taoism, Buddhism and Zoroastrianism. A physical state that, to the uneducated, looks a lot like a paperclip. The employees at our factory are paid as little as possible to ensure the philosophical purity of the life wire and that it is not tarnished by the material desires of those who are blessed with the privilege of bending the life wire into its Phase 1 physical form. In Phase 2, the life wire embarks on an odyssey traversing the globe. Initially in the back of a high-ace van from Chizu in the Anhui province, then into a shipping container in Shenzhen, loaded onto a Norwegian-registered cargo ship bound for Sydney, Australia. For its entire journey, the life wire not only picks up the Earth's magnetic resonance, but many powerful properties and ancient race memories collected via the belief systems of the Filipino merchant seamen on board. Catholicism, Aglipayanism, Iglesia Ni Cristoism, and animism. Much like a metal detector picks up gold on a beach. Phase 3, the life wire is hurled into the back of a FedEx van by the boxload and delivered using global positioning system technology to the Metavibrational Galactic Atomic Health Institute for Applied Wellness. It is right here at the Institute where each life wire is individually processed and charged with its infinite healing power. The final shape-shifting of the physical life wire form is done by innocent children to guarantee you absolute healing purity. My nephews unbend the life wire into a four-sided obeliscoid structure with the two ends not quite meeting. This unfinished loop is the life wire's secret. The two ends so much want to touch each other that they channel infinite energy in their infinite desire to connect. This longing is the same longing that a mother feels for a lost child, a galaxy feels for its black hole, a methamphetamine addict hangs out for a gram of ice, and your body yearns for well-beingification, an infinite pining that both you and the life wire share, which is why you need to be together. For just $79.95, the LifeWire can be yours, channeling your every need and taking the responsibility for everything you do for you. Place one in your wallet to attract wealth, another on your computer to stop spam, and sew another into your underpants for more intense sexual gratification and fertility. Every $79.95 that you send the Metavibrational Galactic Atomic Health Institute for Applied Wellness is another touch point in the space-time continuum and another opportunity for you to manifest the sum total of energy in the entire universe in every cell of your body. Wire transfer me your money and LifeWire will transfer everything. And by scalar zero-point energy theory, that means nothing to you.
Now it's time for Dr. Rachie Reports with Dr. Rachael Dunlop.
Hello listeners and welcome to Dr. Rachie Reports. This week I tell you a tale of blue-green algae attacking birds, Hollywood and dementia. Now many listeners, especially our Australian listeners, would be familiar with blue-green algae. In particular, if you have spent any time in South Australia, you may recall periodic government alerts warning against drinking the water or using it for recreation during outbreaks. Outbreaks are known as blooms, and they describe an increase in the number of algal cells to a point where they can discolour the water, produce unpleasant tastes and odours, affect shellfish and fish populations, and seriously reduce the water quality. Since many types of algae produce toxins, they can also make you very sick and have been responsible for the deaths of livestock and marine species. Blue-green algae is also known as cyanobacteria, and they are in fact photosynthesizing bacteria, which are green when they're metabolizing and growing and turn bluish when they are dying. Algal blooms occur in all types of waterways and water storages and bloom when nutrients and light are high. Whilst not all species which make up algal blooms are toxic, there is no way to know until you test them, so it is best to steer clear. Also, toxicity varies with the seasons and environmental conditions. The toxins, including domoic acid and BMAA, which is a neurotoxin, are released as the bloom dies and the cells become leaky. Domoic acid has been implicated in serious food poisonings and even deaths associated with shellfish poisoning. and BMAA in neurodegeneration such as Alzheimer's disease, Lou Gehrig's disease, or ALS. In Australia, toxicity associated with blue-green algae has been documented as far back as the 1850s, where accounts by European explorers and settlers contain numerous references to scums or discoloured water. The earliest documented scientific evidence was published in Nature in 1878 in a paper called Poisonous Australian Lake. The report described a bloom floated to the lake surface and was wafted to lee shores, forming a scum 2 to 6 inches thick. Large numbers of livestock ingested the scum via drinking, including horses, sheep and cattle, and later died, and one woman became seriously ill. The deaths and publication of the Nature paper created a heightened awareness amongst the public, leading to warnings and police troopers stationed at various points along water bodies to warn of approaching blooms. But in Australia, in the summer of 1991 and 1992, an enormous bloom occurred in the Barwon-Darling River system in New South Wales. This bloom spread over an area spanning 1,000 kilometres and remains today the world's largest algal bloom. But it's not only livestock and humans who are at risk of illness when exposed to algal blooms. A very famous case of sea life allegedly falling victim to poisoning from algae occurred in California, USA. In the early hours of August 17, 1961, residents of Santa Cruz were invaded by a massive flight of sooty shearwaters, slamming into their homes and littering the streets and town. The Santa Cruz Sentinel reported the incident under the headline, "Seabird Invasion Hits Coastal Homes." When the light of day made the area visible, residents found the street covered with birds. The birds disgorged bits of fish and fish skeletons over the streets and lawns and housetops, leaving an overpowering fishy stench. Several theories exist as to the cause of this mass destruction and death of seabirds. The first explanation was offered at the time of the incident by museum zoologist from the University of California, Ward Russell, who proposed that the birds were disturbed whilst feeding, became disorientated in heavy fog that layered the coast that morning, and headed for the light of the town, including torches held by curious residents, thus appearing to attack. But scientists now speculate that ingestion of toxic algae may have played a role. What is known is that the incident sparked the interest of an author across the globe in Cornwall, England, whom several years earlier in 1952 had also been attacked by birds, but in a very different scenario. In an autobiography of author Daphne du Maurier called The Private World of Daphne du Maurier, author Martin Shawcross describes du Maurier was walking her dog by a lake when 2 hungry seagulls attacked her dog, then her, forcing her to seek shelter under a nearby tree. The result was the 1952 short story, The Birds. 4 days after the 1961 sooty shearwater incident in Santa Cruz, the Santa Cruz Sentinel had another story to report. Hollywood mystery producer Alfred Hitchcock phoned the Sentinel Saturday to let us know he is using last Friday's edition as research material for his latest thriller. Apparently, the movie version of du Maurier's book was already underway under the supervision of Hitchcock, but the Santa Cruz incident may have inspired him to change the location from the quaint hills of Cornwall, England, to Bodega Bay, California, where his 1963 The Birds thriller was eventually set. So we now know that blue-green algae can be toxic to both humans and animals, and in some cases fatally. Sure, it's natural, but this doesn't necessarily make it safe. Cyanide is derived from the kernels of apricots. It's completely natural, but it will kill you. The Ebola virus is also natural, but you will suffer an excruciating death as your organs slough out your orifices. So as such, it puzzles me that you can buy cyanobacteria from your local health food store in a powder or tablet and marketed as spirulina. Touted as 100% pure and natural, nature's superfood and totally natural product, spirulina is nevertheless blue-green algae, meaning contamination with BMAA, domoic acid and other toxins cannot be completely discounted. Following the publishing of a paper from the group of Paul Cox in 2005, which reported 30 types of cyanobacteria were contaminated with BMAA, the spirulina industry went into overdrive to ensure their customers that their products were safe. Several issued press releases emphasising correctly that the Cox paper did not test spirulina. One company called Cyanotech Corporation apparently approached Cox to test their spirulina for BMAA, to which they say he did not respond. The company then enlisted the services of another professor of biological sciences to test their BMAA. Professor Carmichael reported his findings confirming the absence of detectable levels of the suspected neurotoxin BMAA in Cyanotech's Spirulina specifica. This is good news for this batch of spirulina and for this company. But what about other producers of spirulina? As discussed earlier, biological variability dictates that levels of toxins synthesized by cyanobacteria are different from season to season. For some of their lifetime, blue-green algae may have no toxins, other times large quantities. If I was a consumer of spirulina, I would want every batch tested before I took it. In another press release from Earthrise Nutritional, they stated, "It should also be pointed out that the connection between BMAA and Alzheimer's disease is far from certain. Dr. Paul Cox's group has not made any definite connection in their report, and other experts in the field have expressed their reservations." The Alzheimer's BMAA hypothesis was first proposed by Cox and colleagues, including the author and famous neurologist Dr. Oliver Sacks, when they found BMAA in the brains of Canadian and Guam Alzheimer's patients, but not in control patients. This hypothesis has been further strengthened with recent findings from scientists at the University of Miami, where BMAA was detected in the brain and spinal cords of ALS patients or Lou Gehrig's disease. Similarly, veterans of the Gulf War have increased incidences of Lou Gehrig's disease at a younger age than the rest of the population. Studies into the causes included analyses of the deserts of Qatar and showed that 56% of the area consisted of cyanobacterial crusts and mats which contained BMAA. Further, an elegant Google Maps epidemiological study of a cluster of Lou Gehrig's patients in New Hampshire revealed that many had resided by water bodies which had been subject to frequent algal blooms. Now, although the Alzheimer's BMAA Lou Gehrig's hypothesis is not yet proven, the evidence is compelling enough for me to think twice before I consume spirulina, especially when one grower has the following listed as side effects: slight fever due to the body's need to burn the extra protein from spirulina, slight dizziness. If this occurs, take less of the product. Thirst and constipation, stomach ache, skin itch or slight body rash. People who have food poisoning from consuming contaminated shellfish often suffer symptoms such as dizziness, nausea, and memory loss after consuming contaminated material. These are pretty similar symptoms to what we see as the side effects for spirulina. Correlation does not equal causation, but the similarities are interesting nonetheless. For more information and references from today's story, please head to the Skeptic Zone's blog at skepticzone.wordpress.com. And until next time, this has been Dr. Rachie Reports.
Join us now for Drinking Skeptically in the Think Tank.
This Stefan's music is grooving on.
Oh no, which one? Oh, the tank. Oh, that's right.
The groovy sort of. Oh, Stefan, we love your music.
Oh, what a great theme song that is.
Thank you for writing the theme song for the Think Tank, Stefan.
It was no problem at all.
And thank you for being here in the Think Tank.
And thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
It's wow, you're here.
And such a big group as well. We've got about 14 people here. Well, it feels like 14.
Joining Stefan and myself is, of course, Dr. Rachie. Hi, Dr. Rachie.
Hi, Dr. Richard. How are you?
Oh, Dr. Richard, I like that. Dr. Eran.
Hello, Professor Richard. You're being upgraded.
I am. Yeah. We have, what's another great title? We have Dame Diana down there.
Dame.
Hi.
Sir Richard.
We have a drunken madman who's just wandered up.
The most reverend drunken madman, thank you very much.
The most reverend drunken madman. The most reverend.
I'm ordained, you know.
And Joe, what are you?
Chief.
Chief Joe.
Chief Nommer.
Chief Nommer Joe Madman. And any moment now, of course, Dave the Happy Singer will be joining us. We're just waiting for him to arrive. And I might have to slip away and actually sign him into the club. But let's get stuck straight into the think tank while we're waiting for Dave. We're going to get to a very important issue in a moment concerning our dear friend Dr. Rachie. But Joe, I noticed you have come well prepared tonight with pages of highlighted text.
Always Where would I be without my highlighters?
Pages upon pages.
Pages upon pages. Oh, I've just been doing my usual news scanning. I think it was the last think tank when we were just starting to hear about a couple in Pakistan who had killed their 4-month-old baby girl because a faith healer had told them that it would make them wealthy.
We talked about that
very briefly. We didn't really hear much about it at all, and in fact, we don't really know much more about it now. But I came across an article today from a newspaper in the region talking about how these faith healers in Pakistan are becoming more and more prominent. Apparently a lot of them have been around for hundreds of years as part of the religion in the region, but that now there are, which is kind of amusing, fake faith healers who are fake faith healers. As opposed to the real ones, but that they take advantage.
Little known skeptics.
Hello.
Now then, Dunlop.
Guess who's arrived?
In case anyone wondered.
How are you doing?
How are you doing?
Awesome.
Who's this guy that just turned up?
Never seen
It's
him
the
before.
big farmer. I think he's going to have something to say.
Hello. Guys, if you've not met Jasmine, this is at Purple Faye from Twitter.
Hello. Hi. Dave, why don't you take a pew up there next to Dr. Eran? And we're just listening to Joe.
Oh, are you recording already?
Yes.
Oh.
We didn't record the
That's great.
We were well prepared for you.
Actually, just before we kick in, I've got a little present to mark the return of Dave the Happy Singer, Big Farmer, for you from Surly Remix.
Oh, you're kidding?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Thank you. Thank you, Silly Amy.
Science saves lives, and you've got one with an A, a sort of a...
Oh, wow. A for atheism.
There you go.
Oh, wow. Thank you.
So great to have Dave back. Joe, where were we?
Where were we? Yes. So anyway, apparently these faith healers who in Pakistan are called peers, they are becoming more and more prominent, and they take advantage of the population who are, in many areas are illiterate and very poor. And the particular case that they talked about here was of a young man who as a child had epilepsy. And his family took him to see various faith healers. And he's actually all right. He hasn't died. Nothing has happened to him as yet. But at the behest of this faith healer, he was ordered to go back to his village and for his parents to bury him in a grave for 41 hours. And after the 41 hours, the parents were to dig a little hole in the ground, put a blade of grass in, and if the blade of grass moved, they should then dig him up again. What? So they all sat around the grave for 41 hours and then popped the blade of grass in, the blade of grass moved, and they dug him up again. Thankfully, he was fine. But apparently this is really a huge problem in these areas, and
It's pretty creative, though. You've got to give him that.
absolutely, it's a pretty novel idea. But this is the sort of situation where, according to the family, this guy is now fine. He's no longer having fits. But, this is no longer having fits. But it sounds like a sort of situation where perhaps it's someone who maybe had a childhood epilepsy, and as they've gotten older, it's subsided, but they are seeing that he's now been to this faith healer, and
I don't think it's anything to do with being buried alive for 41 hours.
I don't think it's got anything to do with that either. No.
I'd have a fit if I was buried alive for 41 hours.
I'd never have one again, that's for sure.
But it's one of these things where in these populations where people have no money and no access to health care, they are so
They probably
easily
had
taken
money before
advantage
they
of
met this guy.
well, they're not actually necessarily taking money from them. This kid went to work for this man, and a lot of them are using these people as labour. They get thousands of followers, and they actually provide them with free labour or all sorts of things.
That's quite a scary story to start us off with, Joe. Gee, thanks for that.
Yes.
Thanks. We'll get to you.
Brighten your day.
We'll get to your UFOs in a second.
Happy story.
But let's cut to the chase, because I know a lot of our listeners, and heaven knows what the story will be by the time this show comes out, because we're recording this on Wednesday. Dr. Rachie, would you like to summarise the story for us?
Look, it's really hard to summarise it, because I've spent the last 3 days getting abused, insulted, had my qualifications questioned in public forums all over the internet because of what is known as the Twitter Oscars, which is the Shorty Awards. Now, I'd never heard of the Shorty Awards until about 3 weeks ago.
Has anybody heard of the Shorty Awards?
I'd followed them last year.
Yeah,
this is the second annual one, so it was new last year, but of course Twitter was a lot smaller this time last year.
Yeah.
So this is the second time it's run, but it's been a lot more interesting this time.
Just a little, yeah.
Well, the first I heard of it was somebody voted me about 2 weeks ago, and so I went and had a look at the website, because I thought, what is this? And then I saw that a natural health person by the name of Mike Adams, who runs the website Natural News, and a guy by the name of Dr. Joe McCullough. Sorry, I've blocked him out. They were coming in the first and second place of the health category, and so I tweeted this, and a few people, and some of them are here, and one of them is sitting right opposite me.
Hi.
Drunken madman Jason Brown decided this couldn't happen, that these two alt-med people should not win the health category in the shorties, and so he went about formulating a campaign. And maybe you want to take up from here, Jason.
Well, it was pretty simple. I tweeted back to Dr. Rachie after she mentioned these two guys were winning and said, okay, we can fix that. And immediately voted, and then immediately asked my followers to vote, and then some of my followers asked their followers to vote, and some of their followers asked their followers to vote, and before too long, Dr. Rachie was in the lead with a healthy margin of about 400 votes.
Yeah, I think Tim Farley.
Quite good.
It's like multi-level marketing.
It is exactly like multi-level marketing.
Tim Farley at Krelnick, who runs What's the Harm.net.
Krelnick was in,
and I think via
Bad
him,
Astronomer.
then the Bad Astronomer Phil Plate, and
Skeptic.
Peasy Myers,
of course, picked it up. And it just went wild. But even funnier was then what happened after Rachel went towards number one.
Oh, hilarity ensued.
Yeah, well, maybe you guys want to talk about it. I don't want to say anything libelous.
You tell it best.
Well, no, I can understand. Well, Mike Adams suddenly found himself without any votes at all, because his nominations were all stripped from him. And he disappeared.
I think, Richard, it's important to point out that this has nothing to do with Rachie or with anybody else. This is the Shorty Award. The people who organised the Shorty Awards disqualified him because of a lot of his votes came from what they considered to be invalid accounts, I believe, because they were accounts created especially for the purpose, basically. It was they just created and then made one tweet and that's it. And
they didn't just invalidate the votes; they actually disqualified him from
because too large a proportion of his total votes.
It was a really large proportion for Adams, and they weren't just making one tweet for Adams voting for him; they were making tweets voting for Rachie in quackery. So
but I must say they were also making votes for me in health, and then making the because an offensive thing, which still is a legitimate vote.
It was brilliant.
So it's kind of like when Bronwyn Hancock went and signed the Stop the AVM petition and said, I don't agree with this, and I don't think we should have this petition. But she signed the petition. She still signed it. That counts as a vote.
I believe she signed the petition again, saying, "I don't want to sign it."
And then she signed it again, saying, "Take my name off this petition." But it's been a little bit like that. The sort of as the events unfolded in the last couple of days, it's been a bit like that, hasn't it? Because
it's been amazing.
It all got a bit hysterical.
Amazing posts by Adams and Mercola going on about how much they don't care about this award, and then crying their eyes out.
And threatening to sue the Shorty Awards.
Calling us little-known skeptics. How dare they?
Yeah. No, I mean, that's been the gist of it, really, is that... And this all resulted in yesterday, Mercola posting on his Facebook page a really nasty post saying that I was a little-known, overweight, non-physician from Australia.
Shill.
I was also a shill. I was also a big pharma whore. And
has that check cleared yet, Rachel? I put it in the post before Christmas, but I don't know, maybe there was strike.
It's the big pharma, the man we blame for all this.
Yeah.
I sent it by carrier crow. Direct from my county.
But the interesting thing about that was eventually his followers started turning on him because of that. In particular because he made the comment about weight, because he's got 63,000 fans on Facebook, and I betcha a fair percentage of those
chances are
they're trying to lose weight.
I've seen some of their profile pictures.
Right, and so they weren't particularly impressed with what he wrote, and there was a hilarious one that you came across, I think, where someone suggested that someone had hacked into his computer.
Oh, that was brilliant, yeah. Mike Adams' computer had been hacked, clearly, because this was so out of character for Mike. It must have been hacking. So, immediately everybody just started picking up on the meme, like you do.
He and the other, Mercola, are sitting in a room somewhere going, she's so fat, she's so fat.
That was PZ. That was PZ because, okay, we've got to send our thanks to Steve Novella, to Rebecca Watson, to Orac at Respectful Insolence, PZ Myers, Phil Plate.
Felnick.
And wasn't yesterday International Dr. Rachie Appreciation Day?
It was. A guy by the name of HJ, and I can't remember the name of his blog now because it's the Pancake House.
Jihad.
Jihad and Happy Pancakes or something like that?
Yeah, Jihad and Happy Pancakes or something like that.
Have you seen Mercola's homeopathic cure for baldness? I just don't know who this guy is, Until last week I thought he was some kind of mythical half-drink, half-fish.
He's got 8 votes in that category, though.
He's winning that by a strong margin.
Well, at
least he's going to win something.
By the time this show comes out, who knows what the story will be, because Mercola, in the last 3 or 4 hours as we record, suddenly his votes leapt by over 1,000.
They doubled, actually. He had about 600 and they went to 1,300.
He's up to 2,600 something last time I checked, which was half an hour ago.
The very latest, just as we record, that I heard on Twitter is that this flood of votes for him has suddenly slowed down. And we've got a couple of people who are kind of downloading the data from Twitter through their search API so that they can actually audit ourselves without relying on Shorty to audit. We can actually trace this back ourselves to a certain extent, and the first impressions are that there are a lot of invalid votes, but let's get the data in and make sure that we're right on that.
The big message we're putting out is, listeners, if you still have the opportunity, only if you have a valid Twitter account, and only if you really feel you want to, you can nominate Dr. Rachie in health.
Or vote for Dr. Rachie.
Or whatever it is.
Yeah, right. Maybe I have just a daytime job, so I don't have a lot of money to invest in this, but perhaps you could use your big pharma money to fund a big campaign to...
Do you know what?
To win this...
Do you know the irony of this, though?
It's really, a prestigious award.
But do you know the irony of this? I get money from a multivitamin company. And I'm not kidding you. I do not get money from Big Pharma, but I do get money from a health food company.
Brilliant.
There you go.
But whatever happens, this could go any way at the moment. Things are literally unfolding as we speak, but, it is just a Twitter popularity contest.
Yeah.
But I think the most amusing thing to take away is, for me at least, is how rattled Mike Adams and Joseph Mercola have gone.
Seriously.
They've been posting the most unbelievable vitriol and bile
Well, Mike Adams' rant about skeptics is a classic. That'll go down in history.
Unbelievable.
The last few days, that rant of Mike Adams and the subsequent blogs that came out of it have provided me with some of the greatest amusement I've had in days.
Well, Steve Novella just ripped him apart.
Yeah, and Oric as well, and also PZ. But I agree with you. And the thing that I find really interesting about that, Dave, is that he insists that we're just a bunch of unknown skeptics. Yet we have rattled the cage of Joe McCullough and Mike Adams.
Big alt men.
Big alt men, big homeo, huge amounts of money.
Big homeo.
Big homeo. Yeah. Huge amounts of money, and it's just been a bunch of us that have got together, and we've managed to make them so angry that they're hand flapping and foot stamping and writing posts as fast as they possibly can.
McCullough's emailed 2 million people in the last day.
Yeah.
According to his.
That's called spamming.
Well, actually, if people want to know a little bit more about the background of the company that is Mike Adams, you know something
Truth
about
Publishing.
that.
Truth Publishing, apparently. I haven't 100% verified this, but it's
that's not really the name, is it?
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
No, it is.
It's a company registered in China, headquartered in Ecuador, which does mass email marketing. Another word for which is spam, essentially. He's kind of made it legitimate because these days, the filthy spam stuff gets you off the internet pretty quick. But his big business is really in sending stuff out to punters and.
Isn't he based in Costa Rica or
He's
something?
in Ecuador.
He doesn't know where he is.
Every article on his site has a little link at the bottom. If you'd like to continue reading this article, please insert your email address.
Yeah.
Every single one.
Yeah.
So it's a little suspicious.
And doesn't one of his other companies have something to do with Big Pharma as well? There's some link,
Yes,
isn't there?
one of his marketing companies is fully legitimate, actually, and has been used by, Bayer, I think, Merck, I think have used his services.
The pot is meeting the kettle.
Quite a lot,
Yeah.
I mean, that's from a blog post, that's going to be double-checked, but that seems to be the long and short of it.
Well, I saw someone else that blogged about what you blogged about as well. So what's so interesting about this is that this little bunch of skeptics have dug all this stuff up, and I've had so many people say they've never heard of him, as you said, Dave, and also no one's ever heard of me, and now they have. And so the thing is...
And your traffic on your Skeptics Book of Poo-Poo
has gone out of control, but it's not exactly the Streisand, really, with McCullough and Adams, is it? But it's a little bit Streisand-y.
There's a lot of skeptics that didn't know who he was before. I mean, I knew who McCullough was. I didn't know who Mike Adams was. Now I know who Mike Adams is, and I'm going to be getting lots of lulls out of him.
I mean,
isn't it interesting in all their rants and all their followers are accusing us of exactly what they are?
Yeah.
A sheeple, or they just believe what they're being told, or it goes on and on.
Nominating Rachel in quackery.
Yeah. But the other thing is, I know that a few of us here, I've been taking a back seat because I don't want to be involved because as far as I'm concerned, it's unethical, unlike what they're doing. But I know a few of us here have been trying to post on Facebook pages and on Natural News, and what's been the result of that?
I've been banned.
You've been banned?
All of the Skeptics posts from the Natural News Facebook page were deleted yesterday, I think. Same with McCullough's wholesale cannon of skeptic comments.
Yeah. Which reminds you of the anti-vaxxers, doesn't it, really?
It was striking.
Well, that said is really
Well, I mean, so many people, when they're nominating you as a quack, they're all saying because she pushes vaccinations.
Yeah, I know. I'm quite happy with that, But there was a really nice comment on one of PZ's blogs today from someone who was saying that there's been a lot of discussion on PZ's blogs and a lot of disagreement, but people will say, I think you're wrong for this reason, and then cite their references. Hello? And this guy was saying, well, I'm so glad I'm a skeptic because I can come on here, I can have a disagreement, we can have a discussion about it, we can agree to go away and look at the evidence. Whereas as soon as you get on any of those sites and you question them, your IP address is taken down and that's it, you're out of there. There's no discussion at all, and they call us sheeple. Yeah, any other ideas that someone wants to put to them, they don't want to hear about it.
They tightly control dissenting opinions.
What an interesting turn of events. Congratulations, Dr. Rachie.
I stirred up and they're still crazy. I didn't mean to.
Well, we await the next few days with great interest, everybody. And of course, by the time this show comes out in a few days, we'll know some more.
Yeah, but there's still time to vote, baby. If you want to.
If you want to. Now, let's... thank you, Dr. Rachie. Wow, what a story. What a story. And now, for another change of pace, we flip over to the Reverend Dr. Eran, whatever you are this week.
Reverend is actually good for this one because I want to quote Reverend Eric Hill from the Saint Peter and Paul Catholic Church in Decatur, Georgia in the United States. He said this. This is from a story on CNN. He said, given all their country and people have been through, between political upheavals, human rights abuses, hurricanes, abject poverty, and last week's earthquake, I think it's last 2 weeks ago, he says this, if Haitians were constantly questioning their faith, they would all be atheists. And I say, well, they should be, shouldn't they?
I agree with that comment.
It's ridiculous that they are not. All of this is thrown at them, but the thing is, he was saying that as kind of a compliment. They're not atheists because they're not questioning their faith. They're just accepting things at face value, and God keeps throwing shit at them. So do you have to beat that?
I thought they'd made a deal with the devil, wasn't that?
That was what
that was
Robert Johnson.
Oh, right, okay. Yeah. The devil tuned his guitar.
So this is really suitable for Religious Moron of the Week on the Geologic podcast.
Just a second. Listeners may be intrigued that there's a lot of background noise which we normally don't have in the think tank. It's the old story. We've been thrown out of our old room because our old room is now a billiards room, and we're now in sort of the back area of the restaurant. I think next time we'll try to look for another location.
I think we might.
There's all sorts of things going on around us.
Or we could pray for less people.
We could. Carry on around.
Yeah, no, that's the story. Just amazing how people see virtue in just blind faith, unquestioning faith in something that is clearly not supported.
It's funny, isn't it? Because I've been watching some of the reports, and there was a woman on the news the other day who said, I'm waiting for Jesus to come and save me.
Still waiting.
You know what the funniest thing would be? If she were actually rescued by the guys from the Israeli Defense Forces who were taking people out of the rubble there.
Well, the Scientologists went down there today to do touch therapy, don't you?
Or John Travolta.
John Travolta's down there today.
With a big
Brian Thompson from the Amateur Scientist podcast said that he actually went there to find... because there are lots of cadavers there, and he needs a lot of hair for his collection of toupees.
That's bad taste. That's awful. Don't join my cabin.
I think Eran touched on something really fundamental there, though, that when you said that it all comes down to faith. And I went for a curry the other night with a young earth creationist pastor who's a really, really nice man. And we had a fantastic dinner, and we talked a lot about creation, evolution, and fossils, and about the historicity of the Gospels and all that sort of thing. But in the end, both of us agreed it all comes down to faith. And I guess one of the fundamental things for me as a skeptic, and I know not all skeptics talk about religion all the time, but for me as a skeptic, it comes down to this idea that faith is virtuous, and I don't think it is. I think taking things without evidence is not a virtuous thing. I think in many cases it's harmful. At the best, it's just pointless. But we seem to have this idea that faith is a virtuous thing, and I'd like to see that change.
But, that brings up another point, Dave, that recently came out, the BBC expose, the Newsnight expose of those divining rods in Iraq.
Oh, yeah.
That people took those on face value. Jim McCormack, and I blogged about this the other day, so you can find it on my amazing blog that's being visited by lots of people now. Have you heard the story? So basically it was sold as a plastic encasing that looked like a gun, and inside it had a sort of antennae that would fling out.
As a bomb detector.
As a bomb detector.
And a cord leading to another little case where they put in a card with a chip in it.
That was programmed to a specific type of explosive, and soldiers would carry it at checkpoints and put it, they still are, and move it around the cars, and if the rod moved, like a divining rod, there was going to be explosives. Now, I saw some footage on the news last night, which made me just gasp in disgust. Apparently this guy, who's selling them for $40,000, by the way, and Iraq spent $85 million on buying them, they said that in order to get them to operate, the soldiers had to generate static electricity, so they had to walk up and down on the ground. So they are standing at a checkpoint in Iraq with this stupid thing with plastic, with a metal rod stamping up and down to generate static electricity.
What a joke.
Everyone has to look at this, because when you see the Newsnight report, you will not believe how gullible and how there's such a lack of
I just can't comprehend how any government could invest that amount of money in something like that without having...
Have you read The Men Who Stare at Goats?
Oh, I know. Funnily enough, that was what it made me think of.
Randy asked a very good question, which of course will be left forever unanswered. But the Iraqi general who is actually responsible for the $85 million expense there, he's responsible for buying it and for distributing it. And he said when he was asked about any evidence that this works, he said, "I know more about bombs than any Americans do, and I know that this works. I don't care about the evidence." And James Randi asked in his video about this whether he might be pocketing some of the difference between the buy price and the sell price.
Yeah, well, it possibly is, but
that could be the answer to how come.
There were another 31 deaths yesterday and 75 injured in a car bomb blast targeting hotels in Baghdad because Chemical Ali was put to death. And so even the Iraqi people are saying that one guy in particular on the BBC report said that he would drive through the checkpoint and sometimes he'd have drugs in his bag and the rod would move, and sometimes he wouldn't and the rod would still move, and he said, "I reckon it doesn't work."
I'm surprised they don't have at least one level of redundancy by having a couple of psychics standing here.
And now we're going to hear from a man we all revere and love, Samuel Hanneman.
Well, hello, everybody. This Saturday there's going to be a celebration of homeopathy. They still believe it after all these years. Big Pharma, why don't you tell us all about it?
Well, I've been getting a little bit annoyed with all this homeopathy. Taking away money from my firms. And my shills, frankly, you have not been working hard enough. And these homeopathists have been making billions. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry, and they're just selling water. So you all go down to the Queen Victoria building in the centre of Sydney on Saturday, and we'll be going to take an overdose on homeopathy and kill ourselves by taking too many homeopathic sleeping pills. And we'll stick it to Big Homeo. We'll eat. 10:23.
I thought it worked at the time. I didn't know.
Samuel, do you know there's a statue of you in Washington, D.C.?
Is there?
Yes.
Oh, I must
apparently
visit it.
there's a huge monument that homeless people camp under.
Homeless people, yeah, that makes sense to me.
Thank you, Samuel. Oh, he's gone. Thank goodness for that. Yes, the 1023 campaign, by the time most of you hear this, I think the campaign might be over. But in case you want to know about it, it's at 1023.org.uk. Check it out. Big protest. And we'll be talking about that in the next episode as well as some videos. Oh, yes, some videos. What a think tank. What a think tank. A noisy one, I must say. Oh, it's gone quiet. Look, we're all looking over towards the restaurant over there, and the food's calling us, I think. Mama's here. Yes. Mama Wong's. We're at Mama Wong's restaurant. I don't know about you, but that think tank's made me hungry. Stefan, what do you reckon?
Actually, as part of my new miracle weight loss program, Eat Less and Exercise More, it probably doesn't fit in perfectly, but I'll certainly give it a go.
Give it a go.
If you run to the register, does that...
It probably would help.
Exercise more.
It might help. Just before we go, Stefan, you've been posting up some videos on your YouTube account, which I think our listeners would love to see.
Oh, yeah, why not? Yes, Richard, this actually goes back to 1993 when we used to hang out at this little piano bar at the Excelsior in Glebe, and we used to have a lot of fun down there, and you actually brought a video camera that day, and we made a video.
We did.
There's a lot of fun on there.
You can check out Stefan years ago doing his song and dance and fantastic
a bit of
stuff.
Doors and a bit of Pink Floyd.
Yeah. What's your YouTube account?
Just Sirius 01, Cyrius 01, Sirius 01.
Check it out, listeners. Have a good look at Stefan.
Oh, it's a good laugh.
He hasn't changed much.
Oh, no, sure.
Not at all. Well, look, thank you, Stefan, for coming along for the think tank. Great to have you on anytime.
Yeah.
Thank you, Eran.
Thank you, Richard.
Thank you. Thank you, Dave the Happy Singer. Great to have you back.
Yeah, it's great to be back. And please visit my website at davethehappysinger.com.
Yeah, get that plug in.
Which is currently blacked out in protest against the Australian government's ongoing plans to censor the internet. So go to davethehappysinger.com to read more about that. And also, Big Pharma, I believe you're now on Facebook, aren't you? Oh, well, let me right, Dave. You can get me at facebook.com/Big Pharma Conspiracy.
Get off my land.
Thank you, Dianne, for coming along. No problem. Thank you. It's the Drunken Madman.
He's a genius.
He is. And for your work with this current interesting issue with the shorties, Joe, good to see you again.
Thank you, Richard.
And until next time, in a... what?
Say goodbye.
Right round the table, and I forgot Dr. Rachie. I'm dead now. Thank you, Dr. Rachie, and what a week you've had. What a week you've had.
Send me some loves, people.
Until next time, folks, goodbye from the think tank.
Yay! Ding, ding.
Such no skeptic that even you forgot.
No bus announcements.
Oh, Richard, what a show.
Thanks for being part of the think tank there, Stefan.
It was awesome.
Wasn't it great?
I can't believe I was actually here. It was like a dream come true.
It was a dream come true. And all our guests tonight...
And I'm completely tanked.
You are tanked. You look tanked to me. Did you have a good dinner?
No, it was very, very, very nice. No, yeah, well, look, thanks for having me, because it was great. And what another great show. What another great show. And we've got another great show lined up for next week and the week after. You just keep it coming, don't you, Richard? We try. There's just no stopping you. We're very trying. That's what they say. That's what they say in the reviews. No, but thanks, listeners. It's been great once again. The show is going as well as ever. As well as ever. Even better. Even better. Even better than ever. By the week. And iTunes is still hanging on in there and looking after us. Ticking over very well. Thank you, listeners. And we'll see you next week. Next time. All right. Bye.
You've been listening to The Skeptic Zone. Visit our website at www.skepticzone.tv for comments, contacts, and extra video reports. The Skeptic Zone.